The number of ambulances called to schools to help students for a vaping-related issue is on the rise, with many cases requiring hospital treatment. That's according to an exclusive Good Morning Britain investigation.
Despite the alarming increase, students that we spoke to are seemingly aware of the harmful dangers vapes pose.
There's not a day where I don't go without seeing a young person under the age of 16 not vaping.
A massive influencer is telling you, OK, guys, vaping's good, it's fun, it's enjoyable, it's cool, then you're going to follow that step.
People use the excuse of, oh, it's stopping me from smoking cigarettes, but most of the time they've not even smoked cigarettes.
I know people who have tried a vape and turns out it had THC, like drugs inside of it, and then they've ended up having to go to hospital.
We're joined now by head teacher Tony McCabe. His school was not part of our investigation, but he does know firsthand the dangers of vaping, having previously called ambulances.
Also here is consultant respiratory paediatrician at Nottingham's Children's Hospital, Dr Jayesh Bhatt, who says he is now treating more lung injuries caused by vaping. And to start with you, Dr Bhatt, the shocking thing, I think, about this story and our investigation isn't that children are vaping or vaping more, but they're going to hospital in ambulances. And we were talking earlier, you think of children getting into trouble at school for smoking, which is against the rules, but they wouldn't be going to hospital. What is happening to our children and their health and their lungs, which means that vaping is causing these very dangerous reactions?
So I first became aware of this in 2016 when I treated a young person related to very severe vaping-related lung injury. And very rapidly, he required increasing levels of breathing support, ending up with an artificial lung to survive. And that's been published internationally as well, a case series where 14 people required that form of support. So in some people, vaping causes such an intense inflammatory response in the lungs, like so much soreness in the lungs, that the lungs just fail. They can't do their work.
More than cigarettes?
Well, I've been practicing paediatric respiratory medicine for over 25 years. I have never, ever seen a child or a young person with similar side effects related to smoking. I might have missed it, but I've never seen it.
What is it, particularly about the vape, which is causing these problems?
So all the constituents in the vape are harmful to the lungs. You know, lungs are meant to breathe in clean air, not less toxic air than something else. So even things like the humectants in the vaping liquid, which are there to keep the moisture in, they may be OK to inhale. So substances which are generally regarded as safe to ingest are OK to eat, but not to inhale. So I think those substances, including nicotine, including the flavourings, you know, one of the flavourings, for example, diacetyl, was responsible for this condition called popcorn lung. It gives a buttery flavour to popcorn, and those workers in the popcorn factory had severe permanent lung damage due to inhaling diacetyl. So there are many, many constituents that we know of in the liquids that cause lung damage.
And the advice which we were hearing from the medical experts, even the chief medical officer 10 years ago, was that for adults, if you are a heavy smoker, vaping is better. You should shift to vaping. So I think lots of us, and parents too, maybe even teachers, got this in their minds that, well, compared to smoking, you know, vaping is OK. And what you're saying is, it's not only not OK, it's really bad, and for children, worse than cigarettes.
I'm a paediatrician, so I wouldn't be able to comment anything about adults who smoke and vape. But clearly, as a community, all paediatricians, all respiratory paediatricians have been extremely worried from the very beginning when this all came in. And we are seeing, you know, lots of examples of children having immediate catastrophic lung injury, but also more symptoms in the medium term.
Well, I suppose the government and NHS at this point would point out it is illegal to buy a vape if you are under the age of 18, and that is partly the reason. And it is illegal for adults to buy vapes for those who are under 18. But Tony McCabe, you are a head teacher of a secondary school. How many of your children do you think are vaping?
Well, we had vape sensors fitted to our school a couple of years ago, and
because so many of them were bringing them into school.
Because so many of them were. On the first day, it was 112 times. Over the series of the years, we've done a lot of work in terms of educating young people, in terms of working with the local authority and trading standards, and the numbers are now starting to drop. But
so not only were they getting hold of vapes, they were vaping in school.
Yeah, so we've never really seen young people walking around with a vape in their hand. It's always something that's done covertly, it's something done behind closed doors, and that's the dangerous thing about it. So parents and carers quite often didn't know that their young person were vaping, and questioned whether our vape sensors were actually telling the truth and whether they were reliable.
So you would call a parent in and say, we found this vape on your son or daughter, and they'd say, no, it's nothing to do with them.
Because, of course, a traditional cigarette you'd been able to smell on the young person, and you can't detect a vape in the same sort of way.
You had a terrible incident, didn't you, where you had a pupil who had vaped, and you actually thought that they were not going to come home from hospital. Tell us about what happened.
Yeah, the young person had received a vape from somebody else. So the first thing that we'd say is, if you're taking a vape that you don't know the source of, then you've got to question whether it's a credible, regulated vape. They took the vape off site. They came onto site. The form tutor noticed that they were a little bit unwell during registration. The first aider was called for. They were taken aside, and the young person then collapsed, and at one point stopped breathing. We had the defib on standby. And that was, I think, potentially the scariest day of my role as a teacher. We come into school to change the lives of young people, and we never want the day to come where we fear that young person might die.
And you know the vape caused it?
So, yeah, we do. Yeah. I don't know if Bolton were kind of ahead of the curve, but we noticed that many of our young people were using vapes that came from the unregulated market, and we now know that some of those vapes contain spice, which is the worst possible drug that young people can inhale.
And that resulted, obviously, in an ambulance being called. You've had 2 other cases, haven't you, where you've had to call an ambulance? And
that's correct, yeah. So the first one was just as we emerged from COVID. So young people had been in lockdown. Young people had been living an unregulated lifestyle, coming back into school. And we noticed that young people were struggling to last an hour, some young people, and having to then go to the toilet during a lesson. And
so they're addicted to their vapes?
We questioned why they were going to the toilet, and turns out that the vape sensors showed that they were addicted to vaping.
Can I ask you, with your experience, and obviously you've been cracking down on this, do you think that pupils, young people, parents, even teachers across the country, do you think today people understand how dangerous vaping is for young people, or do you think people are still kind of complacent?
I think people believe that they're better than cigarettes, which maybe they are if you're an adult and you're smoking a traditional cigarette as a way of weaning yourself off an addiction. But vapes were never intended for young people. And I don't think that society, as in general, had recognised the real dangers, and the fact that if somebody's going to sell a child a vape, you've got to question their credibility.
So what would you say to parents watching the show right now?
First of all, if you do find out that your child is vaping, don't judge them, because they're growing up in a society that is very different than perhaps I grew up in. The second thing is that if they're using a vape, they've got so many influences in their life, they're just trying to follow. The third thing is educate them, tell them the real dangers of using a vape, tell them what it can do if it's laced with something, and support them through the addiction.
Dr. Butt, you know what vaping does to children. So if you are the sort of expert voice on this, what would you say to teenagers?
I would echo what Tony has just said. I think educating that it is not harmless. It does cause significant lung problems, both immediately and in the medium term. And I think we should help them to get rid of the habit for the addiction.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Tony McCabe, just quickly, when someone is in the toilet vaping, what happens with the vape alarm?
So the vape alarms, they don't go off audibly. They go to a central database and then they're picked up. The vape sensors are really clever. Tell us if there's anything in that vape that is illegal. Tell us if there's anything that's dangerous. Fortunately, because the work that we've been doing, we've not detected anything dangerous in the last 12 months. But initially, the information coming through meant that we could then...
Well, anything we
deal
can
with the
do
other
to
people.
stop kids vaping, stop them ending up in hospital is a good thing. Thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
In a joint response from the Health Department and the Education Department, a spokesperson said the Tobacco and Vapes Bill would tackle youth vaping by stopping vapes and nicotine products from being deliberately branded, promoted and advertised to children. Is that a bill that's currently going through Parliament?
That's right. It's the one which is going to also enact that kind of gradual ban on smoking for the whole population, which Rishi Sunak introduced, and then the government's carrying on.
Ah, OK.